For more than 30 years, Jennifer Aniston has existed as a paradox in popular culture. To audiences around the world, she represented comfort, humor, and emotional familiarity. Her presence on screen felt safe, almost reassuring, like someone viewers had known for years. But behind that carefully maintained image was a private emotional reality few people ever paused to consider. Fame amplified her visibility, yet quietly erased her complexity. The world embraced a version of Jennifer Aniston that felt easy to understand, while the real person behind that image learned how to survive without being fully seen. At 55, she is no longer interested in maintaining illusions. Her recent reflections reveal that the smile so often associated with her success was not proof of an effortless life, but evidence of endurance. What many interpreted as confidence was, in truth, emotional self-protection. Her story is not about celebrity privilege, but about how unresolved childhood experiences, public expectations, and personal loss can coexist behind even the most recognizable face in entertainment. Jennifer Aniston's emotional foundation was shaped long before cameras entered her life. Born into a household of working actors, her childhood appeared stable and creative from the outside. In reality, it was marked by tension, inconsistency, and emotional uncertainty. Her parents' marriage was defined by frequent conflict, creating an atmosphere where predictability was rare. As a child, Jennifer did not have the language to describe what she was experiencing, but she understood the feeling of instability deeply. Home was not a place of emotional safety. It was a place where moods shifted quickly and affection felt conditional. These early experiences quietly shaped her emotional instincts. Rather than expressing discomfort, she learned to adapt. She became observant, careful, and eager to avoid conflict. Humor became a tool, not for attention, but for peacekeeping. This pattern would later define both her career and personal relationships, though at the time, it was simply a child trying to survive emotional unpredictability. When Jennifer was 9 years old, her sense of security fractured permanently. One day, she returned home to find that her father was gone. There was no gradual explanation, no emotional preparation, and no closure a child could process. The sudden absence left behind confusion rather than clarity. While the fighting in the household stopped, it was replaced by silence, which felt heavier and more permanent. That experience planted a quiet fear that stability could vanish without warning. Years later, Jennifer would acknowledge how deeply this moment influenced her understanding of relationships. Love, to her, became something fragile, always at risk of disappearing. This early loss wasn't dramatic in the way tabloids prefer, but it was formative. It shaped her emotional caution, her independence, and her reluctance to rely fully on permanence. Long before romantic heartbreaks or public scrutiny, Jennifer learned that attachment came with risk. Her relationship with her mother added another layer of emotional complexity. Nancy Dow placed significant emphasis on appearance, discipline, and outward perfection. Jennifer grew up receiving criticism that focused on her looks, posture, and presentation. These comments were not framed as encouragement, but as correction. Over time, Jennifer internalized the belief that she was perpetually falling short of expectations she could never fully meet. Emotional warmth was replaced by evaluation. Approval felt conditional, dependent on meeting standards that constantly shifted. This dynamic created distance rather than connection. Jennifer later admitted that she struggled with feelings of inadequacy well into adulthood, not because of external rejection, but because those early messages became internal voices. Despite this, she developed a strong desire to break generational patterns. She did not want to repeat the emotional harshness she experienced. However, choosing not to repeat a cycle does not erase its impact. It only means carrying its weight silently, often without understanding how deeply it has shaped you. Fear entered Jennifer's life in a physical form at a very young age. At just 5 years old, a near-drowning incident permanently altered her relationship with control and safety. Riding a tricycle, she accidentally went into a swimming pool and sank to the bottom. She remembers the panic vividly, not as chaos, but as stillness. The inability to move. The waiting. She survived only because her brother saw what happened and pulled her out in time. While her body recovered quickly, her nervous system did not forget. Decades later, she remains unable to submerge herself underwater. This is not a fear she dramatizes or explains publicly. It simply exists. When people doubt it, they misunderstand the nature of trauma. Fear that embeds itself in the body doesn't need logic. It becomes instinct. For Jennifer, this experience reinforced an early lesson. Safety could disappear instantly, and survival required constant awareness. That childhood trauma resurfaced unexpectedly during her acting career. While filming the movie Cake, Jennifer was required to participate in water-based therapy scenes that forced her to confront her deepest fear repeatedly. This was not performance in the traditional sense. It was exposure. She physically weighted herself down to stay submerged, fighting the same instinctual panic she had carried since childhood. Each take required immense psychological effort. It took over 30 attempts to complete a single scene. What appeared on-screen as quiet stillness was actually endurance under distress. This moment reflected a broader pattern in her life. Jennifer often pushed through discomfort without complaint. She adapted instead of resisting. That resilience, while admirable, also meant suppressing fear rather than addressing it. Her career success frequently required emotional endurance rather than healing, reinforcing a cycle where strength was prioritized over vulnerability. Academically, Jennifer struggled in ways that went unnoticed for years. In school, she was labeled inattentive and unfocused. She quietly assumed these struggles reflected a lack of intelligence. Classrooms became places of embarrassment rather than curiosity. It wasn't until her 20s that she received a diagnosis that changed everything: dyslexia. This revelation reframed her entire childhood experience. The confusion, frustration, and self-doubt suddenly had context. While the diagnosis offered clarity, it also came with grief. She realized how many years she had spent believing she was inadequate when, in reality, she had simply been misunderstood. That realization was both liberating and painful. It highlighted how often children internalize failure when support systems fail to identify their needs. Jennifer had learned to survive by adapting quietly rather than advocating for herself. That habit followed her into adulthood, shaping how she navigated both fame and personal relationships. When friends entered Jennifer's life, she wasn't pursuing global fame. She was seeking stability. After years of rejected auditions and short-lived roles, the opportunity felt uncertain rather than guaranteed. Even during casting, the future of the show was unclear. She was contractually tied to another project, juggling risk without assurance. When Friends premiered, its success was immediate and overwhelming. Jennifer had no time to adjust. Rachel Green became a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. The audience didn't simply watch her. They absorbed her. Hairstyles, clothing, mannerisms, everything became reference points. This sudden visibility left little space for personal identity. Jennifer became recognizable everywhere, yet increasingly invisible as an individual. The world decided who she was before she had the chance to understand it herself. Within the cast, there was protection. The 6 actors formed a rare alliance, insisting on equal pay and collective negotiation. That unity created a sense of safety amid chaos. However, external pressure was relentless. Fans approached Jennifer not with curiosity, but expectation. Rachel Green was meant to be cheerful, relatable, emotionally available. Sadness didn't fit the character. As a result, Jennifer learned to compartmentalize. She showed warmth publicly while protecting vulnerability privately. Fame offered security but demanded emotional performance. Over time, this imbalance took a toll. The show brought joy to millions, but it required emotional labor from its actors. Jennifer absorbed that responsibility quietly, rarely acknowledging its cost. Success arrived faster than healing, reinforcing a pattern she had known since childhood. Survival first, understanding later. When Jennifer's personal relationships entered public view, the scrutiny intensified. Her marriage to Brad Pitt was framed as a modern fairy tale. Media narratives left no room for complexity or humanity. Their relationship was treated as symbolic rather than personal. When the marriage ended, Jennifer lost control of her own story. The public didn't witness a private separation. They consumed a spectacle. Rumors replaced facts. Accusations replaced empathy. Jennifer became a symbol rather than a person navigating loss. The claim that she chose career over children was particularly damaging. It reduced her identity to assumptions and ignored her reality. Watching her ex-partner move forward publicly while she processed privately created an imbalance that tabloids exploited relentlessly. During this period, Jennifer withdrew intentionally. She avoided media, limited appearances, and relied on therapy and close companionship. Professionally, setbacks were framed as personal failures rather than creative risks. Every disappointment was tied to her relationship status. The message was subtle but persistent. A woman without romantic stability was incomplete. This narrative ignored her emotional resilience and reduced her worth to relational milestones. Jennifer internalized this pressure quietly, continuing to show professionalism while managing grief. The silence surrounding her personal struggles wasn't avoidance, it was self-preservation. Motherhood became the most invasive topic of her life. While headlines speculated, Jennifer was quietly undergoing fertility treatments. IVF, lifestyle changes, and alternative therapies became part of her private routine. Each attempt carried hope, followed by disappointment. Publicly, she smiled. Privately, she grieved. The cruelty wasn't infertility itself, but the assumptions surrounding it. The idea that she had chosen career over children erased her reality entirely. She later admitted how deeply this misrepresentation hurt. Wanting something deeply and not receiving it is painful enough without being accused of indifference. In 2016, Jennifer chose to speak. Her op-ed addressed media obsession with women's bodies and reproductive choices. It wasn't emotional or defensive. It was controlled and deliberate. She challenged the idea that a woman's value is determined by marriage or motherhood. Years later, she revealed that the essay coincided with one of the most painful periods of her life. IVF had taken an emotional toll, compounded by public scrutiny. She later reflected that she wished women were encouraged earlier to discuss fertility honestly, without shame or pressure. Eventually, Jennifer reached a difficult acceptance. Motherhood was no longer possible. Surprisingly, this realization brought relief alongside grief. The constant questioning stopped haunting her. She no longer had to defend a future that wouldn't exist. Acceptance did not mean indifference. It meant peace. She began redefining fulfillment on her own terms rather than societal expectations. As she entered her 50s, Jennifer's focus shifted inward. Mental health became a priority she acknowledged openly. The global slowdown forced stillness into her life, creating space for reflection. Therapy became less about fixing perceived flaws and more about understanding long-carried patterns. Letting go of the need to please everyone reduced her anxiety profoundly. Her boundaries became firmer. Self-preservation stopped being something she apologized for. Paparazzi attention didn't disappear, but her response changed. She chose when to engage and when to withdraw. Control, once elusive, became intentional. Her life no longer revolved around public approval. This shift marked emotional maturity rather than retreat. Matthew Perry's death deeply affected her. Their bond was rooted in shared experience rather than romance. He understood her in ways few people did. His loss reopened grief she couldn't intellectualize. When she spoke about him, it was without performance, just honesty. That vulnerability reminded audiences that public familiarity does not equal emotional access. At 55, Jennifer Aniston is no longer correcting assumptions. She isn't rewriting her past. She is stating her truth calmly. She acknowledges fearing commitment due to early experiences. She admits wanting children and not having them. She recognizes that fame offered protection but also exposure. Happiness didn't arrive in expected forms. Her story challenges the simplicity often imposed on public figures. Jennifer Aniston was not misunderstood because of secrecy, but because fame rarely allows complexity. The world prefers narratives, not nuance. Her life, like most, exists in contradiction. Perhaps the real question isn't whether Jennifer Aniston was misunderstood, but whether the culture surrounding fame ever allowed her to be fully seen. If this story changed how you view her, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you value honest, human storytelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.